This may sound strange, but I'm wondering, are we overlooking the Houston Astros?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast we talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Where did my lower third go? I thought I had it. There it is. How could I miss it? I'm an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for the last decade or so. This is my fifth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you can win up to a 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON. You get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states, so check out Sleeper today. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Let's get right to the trivia question. And the trivia question was, who is the only member of the Oakland A's to win the All-Star Game MVP? And there are a lot of superstars to pick from. Reggie Jackson, Vida Blue, may he rest in peace. Raleigh Fingers, Catfish Hunter, Ricky Henderson, Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire, Dave Henderson, Dennis Eckersley. You also have Jason Giambi, Miguel Tejada, Barry Zito, Mark Mulder, friend of the podcast, Sean Doolittle. All of those people were all-stars with the Oakland Athletics. But the only one to win the All-Star Game MVP was Terry Steinbach. And Resto Neek, who listens to the show all the time, was the first one to get that correct. Terry Steinbach was part of the Oakland A's in 1988. He had a nice career, but when he was chosen to the All-Star team in 1988, he was looked upon as a bit of a result of the ballot stuffing that was going on in Oakland, back when Oakland fans had enough power to stuff ballots. We'll get to the Oakland A's in the third part of today's show. But Steinbach was considered a joke that he was part of the team, but he wound up hitting a key home run off of Dwight Gooden to give the American League the lead and ultimately the victory. So Terry Steinbach is the only member of the Oakland A's to win the All-Star Game MVP. You know, there are memories of other Oakland A's players, especially Reggie Jackson, hitting the home run off of Doc Ellis off the light tower in Tiger Stadium in 1971. But here's the deal. The American League lost that game. Anyway, so good job, Restonique, for getting that. Let's stay with the American League West while we're here right now. As I'm recording this, the Red Sox are ahead of the Texas Rangers. And you know the results of that game. I don't know the results. I don't know the results of that game. But if the Red Sox hold on to that score, then the Texas Rangers lead in the American League West will be reduced to 2. Even if the Red Sox lose the game, it's going to be at a pretty tidy 3 games with, the All-Star Game right around the corner. And an interesting thing, the Houston Astros are the defending World Series champion, and they have been in the last 2 World Series. And that's how graciously I'm going to phrase that. I know. I'm not supposed to talk ill of the Astros and everything like that, but nobody outside of the city of Houston acknowledges the 2017 World Series title, and not a lot of people acknowledge the 2019 pennant that they won. But we can give them credit for the last few years and back-to-back trips to the World Series, winning it last year. And I picked them to repeat as World Series champs. And for some people who will take issue with what I said before and claim, and as Astros Twitter has jumped on me all over, I will kindly remind you that I have rooted for the Astros in the last 2 World Series based on my love for Dusty Baker. Well, when you and I picked them to win this year, and I think a lot of people did. Not everybody. Some people thought the Mariners were going to win. How's that working out for everybody? Some people held on to the Angels. Looks like Mike Trout is going to have some sort of hand surgery. He may come back. He may not. I don't know what's going on. Lo and behold, MLB was posting a story about, does this mean that they're going to have to trade Shohei Ohtani? I wonder if they listened to the podcast from the other day. I think they should. I think every contending team should line up to get him. And a couple of the listeners here seem to agree with me, but I digress. I think sometimes there is a eagerness to want to crown a new champ, to want to have someone else be on the top. And, I saw that like crazy when the Braves were winning division after division all throughout the 1990s. There was always a rush to have someone, this year, this team's going to get ahead of them. This year, this team's going to get ahead of them. And year in, year out, it was always the Braves. I think a lot of people were eager to see a new team take the place of the Astros. And the Astros have been trailing the Texas Rangers for the bulk of this year. And lest we forget, a little mini slump at the end of June, that between the 20th, 21st, and 22nd, the Astros fell out of their wild card spot. They're on the outside looking in, and they're having disappointing performance by some of their players, and maybe the loss of this player, that was just a little too much for the team to withstand. Not sure if you've noticed how the Astros are doing, but they've won 10 out of their last 4 games. Have stampeded back into their playoff spot and are now taking a good, long, hard look at the Texas Rangers. And while the Texas Rangers are maintaining a few-game lead on the Houston Astros, remember, the Rangers have been overachieving. And an odd thing can happen to overachieving teams. Sometimes they get back to playing the way that people expect them to after the All-Star break. And if that's the case, the way the Astros have been playing, it's been pretty interesting. And the interesting thing for me as an outsider looking in this, they've been getting contributions from players who are not necessarily the ones who you would expect. Yainer Diaz, is that how you pronounce his name? Right now, it's the first time I've ever said his name out loud. Hitting 2 more home runs today in their sweep of the Colorado Rockies. Yeah, I know they're the Rockies. The Rockies are not a very good team, but guess what? You've got to win those games. If you're trying to make up ground, you're trying to stampede back into the division titles, sweeping away the series is one way to do it. Brandon Bielak, again, names I've never said out loud. And you understand what it is when you see a name, you see it's printed. Who am I talking to about the Astros when I go to work? Nobody. Dubon has been playing well. France has been playing well. Jeremy Pena has been playing well. It's not necessarily the veterans who've been picking up picking things up. Kyle Tucker didn't necessarily have a very good series against the Colorado Rockies, but he's having a wonderful season, across the board. The highest slugging, the highest OPS on the Astros team. If you still like batting average, he is the highest one of that too. Alvarez is leading the team in home runs. They're getting quality contributions from players. Framber Valdez is becoming the ace that I think a lot of people, including your pal Sully, thought he was going to be. And they've won 10 of their last 14 games. And I think it's one of these things like, at the beginning of the year, everything was Rays, 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 other Rays this, other Rays that. And through this middle part of the season, you've seen the Texas Rangers, wow, they're holding off all comers. Oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. Oh, are the Angels going to put together something? Oh, the Orioles going to put together something. It kind of reminds me in some of those years, not just when the Braves were winning the division year in and year out, but when it was every single year the NBA Finals were the Warriors versus the Cavaliers. Remember that? It was 4 straight years where those are the 2 teams in the finals. And a lot of people throughout those regular season kept saying, man, this is going to be one unpredictable postseason we're going to have here. And what happens? The same exact thing. I have a hunch with all the attention played on the Rays, and the Rays have come back to earth a little bit. They're still having a wonderful season. They'll probably win north of 100 games, but they're no longer on this rampage. In fact, they're not even the team with the best record in baseball anymore. That belongs to Atlanta. Some of the attention is being put onto Baltimore with the wonderful wild card season they're putting on here. But when you've seen that the baton has been passed to the Tuckers, to the Peñas on this club, and it's their turn to lead the squad. And while this would be a chance at a third straight trip to the World Series for the Astros, this is a very, very different looking team than the one who lost to Atlanta just 2 seasons ago. I think that we've been complacent seeing the Astros at the top. They're sneaking up. As much as a defending World Series champion and 2-time defending American League champion can sneak up on you winning 10 out of 14 games. Sorry, 11 out of 15 games. But the fact of the matter is they're doing it. And if they're one of the teams that's going to make a key move at the trade deadline, file this under yikes. Now, another team, the team that the Astros played in the division series of 2021, is going to play a key role in this year's trade deadline for a much, much different reason. Hey, what we're going to talk about right now, we are going to be talking about Sleeper. Do you want to earn 100 times your money on daily fantasy baseball? Of course you do. Sleeper is offering up to a 100 times your payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less of your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you can win big. Predict the hottest baseball stats and much more to cash in on your daily baseball fantasy skills. On this game of chance, use promo code LOCKEDON and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Dynamic payouts are live. Now, what are dynamic payouts? In short, each player projection now has a multiplier attached to it as opposed to preset multipliers based on the number of legs in a contest. With dynamic payouts also come more stat categories to place contests on. You get higher payouts than other apps with less picks. Built-in group chat functionality where you can see and copy your group's pick with just a tap of the button, and entries can be made in 30 seconds or less. It's that easy. Use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. Check them out today. All righty, folks. As I alluded to, the Chicago White Sox, the Astros opponent in the 2021 Division Series, are about to face one of their most critical few weeks in recent years. Now, I've talked about it, I think with no hyperbole, about the importance of these next few weeks in the history of the Angels, based upon the existence of Shohei Ohtani probably, leaving town after this year, and they have to figure out what to do. But for the White Sox, they find themselves in a kind of envious position. And for Kenny Williams, for Rick Hahn, for Chris Getz, the farm director, for Mike Shirley, the scouting director, this is when they have to earn their money. This is when they all have to get into the war room, look at each other, and say, folks, first of all, here, have one tiny come to Jesus moment. Yes, the American League Central is not a very good division. Going into Wednesday's games, the Chicago White Sox are 13 games under 500, and it's no longer early in the season. After 87 games, they're 37-50. They're closer to 400, they're closer to 400 than to 500. They're playing 425 baseball. Yes, they are 7 games out. No, none of the teams in front of them are world beaters. In fact, the Minnesota Twins, as of this recording, are a simple 1 game over 500. And the White Sox have a lot of familiar and critical names on their team. So you would think that they'd be able to at least put up a 500 team, which would put them right in the thick of it right now. The Cleveland Guardians are a sub 500 team as we're approaching the last weekend before the All-Star game, and they are only one game out. And they may still trade away their star pitcher in Shane Bieber for the reason that this is a seller's market. Now, if you take a look at the Chicago White Sox farm system, they do have some quality players on there. Brian Ramos is a player building up through their farm system. Colson Montgomery is a shortstop coming up through their system. More on Colson Montgomery in a second. Noah Schultz is a quality left-handed pitcher. But the problem with almost all of these players that I'm rattling off, that unless you are an addict of Locked On MLB prospects, you don't know who most of these players are. The fact of the matter is, most of these players are not expected to be on this team until 2024, 2025, and some not till 2026. They're decent prospects in their farm system, but how many are on the verge of being a player on the team right here and right now? Which brings us to the trade deadline. Now, there have been several names that have been kicked around about the trade deadline for the Chicago White Sox. The biggest name is Lucas Giolito. Giolito is a fine pitcher. He would be a tremendous addition to any contender starting staff, and quite frankly, probably has more value on another team than a rebuilding White Sox club. Yasmani Grandal would be a big help for a team that would need help in their catching. I would have put the Astros in this category just a few weeks ago, but the way that Yainer Diaz is playing these days, I think that maybe Grandal will be heading to Miami. Then Dylan Cease is another quality pitcher, just 1 year removed from having just an outstanding, Cy Young contending season. Tim Anderson's name is bandied about. I don't think they should trade Tim Anderson for this reason. First of all, he's a club option next year for $14 million. He is, when healthy, an all-star caliber player. When healthy, he's the face of the franchise. However, he's not been healthy. So why would you trade away a player for pennies on the dollar when you can bring him back next year for 14 million tomatoes and hopefully see him get back to close to his all-star form? If he's back to his all-star form and the White Sox are contending, great. You've kept him around. You've got a winner. If he gets back to his all-star form and the White Sox are not contenders, great. You can trade him away. If he does not get back to his all-star form, it's only a 1-year option. And you can say, thanks for the memories. Thanks for hitting that home run into the cornfield. Now to Delu. Plus the fact Colson Montgomery is right now the top prospect in the Chicago White Sox organization. He's a shortstop. So what you're hoping is that by 2025, Montgomery is ready to be an everyday player. And then you can make some real decisions whether or not you want to keep Tim Anderson, you want to move Tim Anderson to another position, or whatnot. But it does mean that they should be dealing away some of these other pitchers. And I throw another name in there as well. Lance Lynn is having a rotten season, but he's just a year or so removed from being a legitimate all-star and a fringe Cy Young contender. Plus, he's a player who's been there, done that as a World Series champion with the St. Louis Cardinals. So I can't help but think that if the White Sox were to swing a deal involving Giolito to say, hey, take Lance Lynn too, pick up his contract with that too, or Cease, you got to take Lance Lynn with him as well. Because for a team to say, okay, we're going to add in Lance Lynn and you hope you get 2 good months out of him. But you also got to think that I think that the White Sox should consider bundling, because what they need more than anything is that trade piece right in the middle of the squad. That trade piece who is a big contributor right out of the gate and can be brought up to the major league roster, and a team might be more likely to trade away a player like that if they know they're getting pitching depth for the postseason and not just one pitcher on a rental situation. So when you take a look at one, so like you take a look at what did the White Sox do just a couple of years ago when they caught pay dirt in a deal for uh, when they traded away what was it? Why am I forgetting his name? Um from God, the pitcher. What was the name of the pitcher they traded to the Cubs? Why am I losing my mind? Okay. Well, they got Eloy Jimenez. Who did they? Why am I? And it's telling that I'm remembering the player they got from the Cubs, Eloy Jimenez, and I'm forgetting the name of the player who they traded away from. He was. I wanted to say Carlos Carrasco, but that's not who it was. Um, Jose Quintana. Ah, Jose Quintana. They hit pay dirt with that. Eloy Jimenez has not become the gigantic superstar that they wanted to, but he's certainly become a quality player. Now, perhaps, and by the way, who else did they get in that trade? Dylan Cease. So they got Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez in the same deal for Jose Quintana. And part of that is they were able to, they sold high. Now, this is a seller's market because so many teams are in the hunt that maybe, just maybe, the White Sox might be able to fleece another team or Dylan Cease another team. If they could get a quality player back for Dylan Cease and keep Eloy Jimenez, then that trade for Quintana will be the deal that keeps going and keeps giving. Can't believe I forgot his name. But for the White Sox, these next few weeks, the scouting department, Mike Shirley, the farm director, Chris Getz, the general manager, Rick Hahn, the president, Ken Williams, they all need to be doing their homework because this is a winnable division for the next couple of years. And if they make the right moves now, 2024 and 2025 might be within their reach. Some snags have been going on regarding financing of the Las Vegas stadium for the A's, making people wonder what the heck is going on. There's been some pushback from the city of Las Vegas. Yeah, no kidding. Because building a major league stadium with public money is a stupid idea. And baseball has a different relationship with Las Vegas than football. Football is a betting sport. A lot of people bet on many more people bet on football than on baseball. Football has more of a national following. Baseball is more of a local following. So you're going to put a team that has a local following in the center of the town, away from where most of the locals live. It's insane that they want to use public money for this. And of course, the teachers associations of that area going like, hey, how come you've turned over enough cushions to find money for an Oakland A's stadium and yet can't fund us? Let me tell you something. Your pal Sully is a public school teacher as well as a podcaster here. And every hour on the hour, I get an email from Nevada Teachers Association saying, please consider moving to Nevada. Why? Because I have a teaching credential and a pulse, which are apparently what's required for the massive teacher shortage that they have there. Why do they have a massive teacher shortage there? Because they pay their teachers some of the lowest wages in all the country. And with a massive, that's just on that level. And the fact of the matter is, they're trying to pay for a Major League Baseball stadium with money they clearly don't have for other things. By the way, did you notice they wanted to build it on the Tropicana site? The name Tropicana doesn't really bring a lot of luck for baseball stadiums. I digress. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Drop Las Vegas. Consider this a gift. Drop Las Vegas. John Canzano wrote a piece that I will link up on the Locked On MLB Pods Twitter handle, uh, basically pointing out why the Lloyd Center in Portland should be the site of a Major League ballpark. Lloyd Center, which used to be a mall shopping area, is a prime piece of real estate that could turn in, is certainly large enough to house a ballpark. Now, could the city of Portland reconfigure Providence Park, the home of the Timbers, temporarily to be a baseball stadium? That's where the Portland Mavericks used to play. That's where the Portland Beavers used to play. Hell, if they could turn that crazy stadium in London into a baseball stadium for a little bit, maybe they can do the same for Providence Park. And right there in the heart, smack dab in the heart, right nearby Powell's Books in Portland. And do that temporarily while they build the Lloyd Center Park. Why Portland? Because of the success of the Portland Timbers, because of the success of the Portland Trailblazers, because several generations ago, the success of the Portland Mavericks. They are a city that has, first of all, there's money there. There's corporate ties they can do there for, for some of the basics, but they also have a population that has much deeper roots than the population of Las Vegas. And local roots and pride of your city and pride of your sports heritage is critical in baseball. This is what we learned with the Marlins, that there are more Yankee fans in Miami than there are Marlin fans. There are more Cub fans in Phoenix than there are Diamondback fans. People stick with their teams the way that I remain a Red Sox fan, even though I haven't lived in Massachusetts since Ronald Reagan was president. Consider these snags with Las Vegas to be a blessing. I talked in the last segment about the White Sox. The White Sox were on the verge of moving to Tampa. It seemed like a closer deal than the A's currently have because they were going to move into a ballpark, the stadium that eventually became Tropicana Field. Same thing with the team that plays right up the 101 from where I'm sitting right now. The Giants were on the verge of moving to Tropicana Field after the 1992 season. They were printing out the shirts. They had season ticket rallies. Last minute plug pulled. Boink, the White Sox nearly moved to Seattle. Boink, all sorts of moves like this were thwarted at the last minute that had many more I's dotted and many more T's crossed than the Oakland A's have right now. If the A's have to move, I understand why. I don't want them to, but I get it. Las Vegas will be a disaster, and we're seeing they don't even want it. Now, of course, the billionaire owners could get together because they all could get together, little fund, because solving the A's stadium situation, solving the Tampa Bay situation will put millions of dollars in the pockets of all the other owners. Why? Because once they do that, once they figure out those two situations, they can expand baseball by at least two teams, which they're going to do eventually. So it's been the longest since we've had without an expansion. And Nashville and Charlotte and maybe Montreal or maybe San Antonio, there are places you can put a team. Nashville is the biggest no-brainer of them all. I think Portland is a pretty big no-brainer. Maybe revive the Montreal Expos. I don't know. I think they're going to keep the Rays in Central Florida because a team can survive in Central Florida provided they have a shot. Portland A's, keep them in the AL West. Have a natural rival with the Seattle Mariners and have a fan base that would embrace them. And the A's are a kooky, sort of quirky organization going back to the days of Connie Mack and Charlie Finley. Maybe it'd be a perfect fit for the city of Portland, which I haven't been to in a while, but the last time I was there, it was a little quirky itself. I know it's changed a lot over the last few years, but you know what? Let's give it a shot. Listen to me. Things falling apart in Las Vegas, not necessarily a bad thing. All right, let's wrap up today's show. Today's trivia question is this: which player in baseball history has the most career hits while playing for only one major league franchise? We all know Pete Rose is the all-time hit king, and whether or not his Hall of Fame exclusion is justified is the topic of an upcoming podcast. But we know he played for the Reds and the Phillies, and some of you may have forgotten he played for the Expos. So he had more than one team that he played for. What player who played his entire career with one team had the highest number of hits in their career? Well, people are walking in and out of the house, so maybe time to get off the podcast here. But follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Phones ringing on the July 6th. That's the hotline saying wrap up the podcast. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.